Move on to the Kilkenny Championship at the weekend, Nickey. Things really heating up ahead of the quarterfinals this weekend. There's maybe been, I don't know if there's ever shadow boxing down in Kilkenny, but there was no real jeopardy until last weekend, and it gets fairly tasty this weekend. Like Ballyhale Shamrocks and Dixborough this weekend is as tasty as you'll get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose people who've been watching the Kilkenny Championships will know that Shamrocks, not for the first time, ended up down in the second last in the table, which means they were in the relegation. And that's nothing new in Kilkenny. Shamrock have a habit of not over-egging it during the course of the league, getting things right, and then having all guns blazing. Now, they drew Danesfort, who have been having a difficult year, but performing generally okay. But Shamrocks then decided they were going to fly back Colin Fennelly all the way from Dubai. And he was not a big scorer, I think, in the game last Saturday, but very influential. And he was pretty shattered after the game, but got to the airport on Sunday and was back in the office in Dubai for an important meeting on Monday morning. And he'll fly out of Dubai again probably today to be ready for the Dixborough match tomorrow evening. So, on Saturday evening. So that's the life of her. But there's another guy to talk about later on when we come to who even travelled further. Not for that match, of course. There you go now, lads. That's just leave Dubai on a Friday, get to Kilkenny, play a match, go back and be ready in the office for your business meeting on a Monday morning. That's what it's like now.
Is it a bit of is there a bit of desperation with that though, Nickey, as well, that they need him to come back and that they're doing that? They're missing Joey Holden, to Joey Cuddy. I think one of the is Brian Cody's missing as well. There might be
Brian
one
Cody,
more.
Yeah, Brian is in Australia. I'm not sure where Joey is. Joey Cuddy is. Joey Holden is on his travels. This is a case now, if they could start tracking and me up to bring him back down again, I think they'd love to do that. I know they'd love to have Holden back. All sorts of rumours that he might suddenly appear in UPMC Nolan Park on Saturday evening around 3:30 and walk into the Shamrocks dressing room. Look, anything is possible in this day and age. But look, Colin Fennelly was a big help to them last week. I mean, but for a missed penalty from Danesfort, they could have made it trickier for the Shamrocks. But once they got over that Danesfort missed goal, Shamrocks kind of took off again, and there was obviously never any doubt at the end who the better team were. But yeah, they need everybody on board, and you know, it's strange to say about the Shamrocks, but they don't actually have a huge amount of reserve talent. And in fact, after playing Danesfort last week, they had to bring on a number of players, and that left them unable to field a team a couple of nights later in the Kilkenny Junior Hurling Championship. They had to give a walkover.
Right, okay. And like another question, is this now the time that surely some of the other teams in Kilkenny, because they see the Shamrocks struggling for numbers and some players not there at the moment, like they have to finally make a push and dethrone them?
Yeah, look, the gap is closing. But then we said the gap was closing between Limerick and the rest last year and the year before, and we saw what happened. Look, I do think that they're playing, the team that's been playing the best club hurling in Kilkenny this year at Dixborough. A young, lively, fast team, and they're doing very, very well. So look at, I do think it's tightening, but when you have a strong half back line with Dara Corcoran, Richie Reid, Evan Shefflin, and a half forward line of maybe TJ Reid, Owen Cody, and Adrian Mullen, that type of strength. Now, when you look at lines like that, you say, God, they'll nothing beat them. But look, the teams are, Dixborough are probably getting them at the right time. If you could ever use that statement and all that. But I mean, the Shamrocks will go into the game as favourites because of who they are. They're able to conjure up scores. Like TJ Reid is still able to pull big scores out of the fire. And at the end, he only got 2 goals against Danesfort last week. They'll be looking for a bit more maybe from Owen Cody. He's played some very good matches. But look, they're playing a good, strong team in Dixborough, well-conditioned Dixborough, well laid out, and a team probably without stars, in the sense that there's probably no person you could say on the Dixborough team is automatically going to walk onto the Kilkenny team in 2024. They probably have to. There may be some of them will come on, but they're not like that. Whereas you could say with the Shamrocks, well, there's 4 or 5 probably already there, and maybe the lads on the fringes are like Dara Corcoran. They're likely to come and make a position for themselves next year.
Who's impressed you for Dixborough this year? Like, who's on form?
They're all playing well. Actually, Killian Buckley has been playing very well. Bill Sheehan in the forwards, strong in defence with Evan Cody, Pádraig Moylan, and there's a couple of the Nolans. Aidan Nolan has been playing well. So I think the thing about Dixborough is that they're a team of maybe not a huge amount of stars, but they're a lot of consistent. And I better give a shout out to my own nephew, Owen Fenley, who's playing very well at the moment for Dixborough also. He's been consistent over the last couple of years. It started to get a run under Michael Walsh, and he's repaying him big time. So as I said, a very consistent team without stars, and the Gaffneys are always good for a goal or two in the attack as well. So look, they're going to be. There's a question there from Richard Hogan about Brian Butler. Now Brian Butler went off injured against Danesford. We don't know, Richard. Richard Hogan is the caller there. Don't know if he's back or not yet. But he would be a loss to them because he's also a big player. And the question about Harry Shine as well. Now I saw Dixborough playing in the last round of the league against Mullinavat, and while they won the match by 4 points, Mullinavat gave a very decent account of themselves, but kind of ran out of energy at the end. Harry Shine played in that match. But as Joe Butler says on the line there, Timmy Clifford has been probably one of the star players, and interestingly, I believe he's playing in his best position, which is wing back. And I think if you're next year when Kilkenny tug out, I think you will see Clifford playing wing back, because I always felt that was his best position, and going forward as well.
Nickey, just on the Borough, is it time for them now? Is it SH1T or get off the pot for the Borough at this stage? Like they need to put in a big performance and take down Ballyhale at the weekend. Like if they were to take down Ballyhale at the weekend, that could potentially be a changing in the guard. If they don't, Ballyhale could win 6 in a row and potentially win a Leinster title. But like this is the time, is it not?
Well, it's the time for the Borough to beat Shamrocks Ballyhale. By beating Shamrocks Ballyhale, it does no guarantee that it's going to be the Borough's championship. I mean, the other quarterfinals that we'll talk about in a moment, the teams in that, and certainly some of them will feel they're in with a very, very good chance of winning their particular games. But this is a big obstacle. I mean, maybe the Borough would prefer not to be playing the Shamrocks, no question about that. But they are where they are now, and they have to face up to it. And as I said, it might not be the worst time to be playing the Shamrocks. They still have to get a number of things right. But when the Shamrocks get into Nolan Park, and interestingly, 2 of the quarterfinals are played in UPMC Nolan Park on Sunday. Saturday is taken over with minor finals, while the other 2 games are at country venues. So it's interesting that Shamrocks are in UPMC Nolan Park, a game that's actually live on TG Cahir, and they obviously have always excelled when they get into the park.
And I'm just noticing here from the way the quarterfinals have worked out, Mullinavat against the Loughlin Gales, James Stephens against Greg Ballycallan, and like we've been talking about there, Dixborough against Shamrocks Ballyhale. You could be looking at 3 of the big city teams in the semi-finals. The other quarterfinal there is Glenmore against Bennett's Bridge. But, you know, the city haven't won it since Dixborough back in, was it 2018, 2017?
18, yeah.
2017, actually.
Oh,
like, the city needs to strike back.
And there's no surprise that the city teams are dominating. I mean, they have been dominant at underage for a long number of years. So there's no great surprise there. And look at all of the reason that city teams have not won for those number of years you've mentioned there is one very simple reason. It's called Shamrocks Ballyhale, because they've been an exceptional team. If you take Shamrocks Ballyhale out of the equation, yes, they would certainly have won more. So there's not a lot in it now. That the 3 city teams, I think will have a big say in it, and we'll be coming on to the games the other 2 city teams are playing. There's a reasonable chance that you could see 3 city teams in the semi-final.
Nickey, just on James Stephens, it's James Stephens and Greg Ballycallan. That's the curtain raiser on Sunday. Is like Brian Cody is like the man who can't be moved. Like he goes from Kilkenny, been there for 23 or 24 seasons. He's involved as a selector last year. He's manager this year. How are they motoring under him? And does he look as energetic as ever on the line?
The shadow of Brian Cody was always in a large field on the Kings Road at the James Stephens Club. He was never that far away, even when he was walking the sidelines of Croke Park or Semple Stadium or Nolan Park. I'll be absolutely clear about that. He's gone back in. He's had a great reception from the players in there. They absolutely think the world of him inside, and they're getting on very well. Now, they took a big blow against the Loughlin Gales last weekend in the League and Shield final. The 2 League and Shield finals were on last week. But let's not get carried away with those. They're games that are not taking me over seriously. If there's any sort of niggly injuries, players are pulled from it. But there is talk that Kilkenny might not be available for the game at the weekend against Greg Ballycallan. And Greg Ballycallan, they played James Stephens in the first game. Now, we actually covered that match, and James Stephens won the game, but there wasn't a lot in it. Now, Ballycallan are coached by Eugene Cloonan from Galway this year. Again, he was gone last year but he's back again this year. And they made a conscious decision at the start of the year to play a number of young players, like Jeff Neary, still in Kieran's College, Aaron McAvoy, Brian's son, young Corcoran as well, and Billy O'Neill. Ryan Corcoran and Billy O'Neill, both of those latter two played with Kilkenny CBS last year. Now they have been a revelation in terms of the way they performed this year, and they're missing one of the Eagans who's in Australia as well. So they've done brilliantly to get to this stage. Now this has been the best that Ballycallan have done, and maybe at last Eugene Cloonan is atoning for the scores he got against them when he played against them in the All Ireland Club final many years ago, depriving of winning an All Ireland. This is his chance to pay back the club for the pain he inflicted on them. Well, he's doing a great job there. He is James Royal and Richard Hogan makes a very good point on this. I mean, while Brian McAvoy is not directly involved with James Stevens, as far as I know, and son Aaron will be for Greg Ballycallan on the other side. Tracy Millay will be his mum. So look, it is an issue. Again, Richard Hogan, I think I know what that is. He has made a very good point there. Any worry about the pitch in Thomason given the weather last weekend? I think that's a very fair point. I covered a matter last day in hurricane-like conditions between Dunnamaggin and Young Earls of Gordon in the intermediate, and I think the pitch will it'll be a test for the players down there. It will not have the free-flowing hurling that you might have in UPMC and Nolan Park. I still think James Stevens will be experienced enough to get home Greg Ballycallan, but Greg Ballycallan have certainly been one of the success stories of the Kilkenny Senior Championship this year, and Billy Ryan is hurling out of his skin, playing ironically at midfield.
Hey, UPMC must be giving you a few quid, Nicky, are they?
Not a problem. I shook David Burton's hand last Saturday. I was at an event, all right. So those of us in Kenny are conditioned to appreciate those that put their hand in their pockets and help any aspect of the association. But I have to say, we've seen nothing coming from him yet, myself or radio now. But you know what? You're after prompting me to do something about it.
No, I tell you what, I'd be the same. I wouldn't mention sponsors in any other grounds, but Borough are sponsored by Brendan's Park is Grant Heat in St. Brendan's Park now, and I'd always say Glenisk O'Connor Park. I'd look after my own local ones. I wouldn't be too worried about the other ones. But something else you mentioned there. Something else you mentioned there about Eugene Cloonan, that great story when they played Greg Ballycallan in the All-Ireland Club final, and I forget who he was marking, but they went out for a ball around the sideline together. It was near the end of the game. They collided, both lost their hurls. Cloonan picked up the closest hurl to him, put the ball over the bar, realised it was his opponent's hurl, handed it back to him. Like that is as sick an incident as will happen in a game, to score a point with your opponent's hurl and then hand it back to him.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know what you do with that hurley. If you're a Greg Ballycallan person, would you burn it or would you frame it as having scored an important point?
But Nicky, just to look at the other quarterfinals in Kilkenny, Mulnavat and O'Loughlin's. I think Mulnavat beat them at this stage last year. Am I right in saying?
Yeah.
So they'll be ready for an ambush, I'd say.
Well, look, a tricky obstacle. I've seen Mulnavat play 2 games recently. They played against Sixburn, which I alluded to earlier. They lost by 4 points, so 2 points being taken time. And I just felt maybe Dixon were just taking a bit too much out of the ball. But very good, I thought, Mulnavat. I was at the next match where they played Clara, and that was the final game. And I thought they were awful. And I just was disappointed with them that day. Clara looked a lot better. Now we have a scenario where Clara got bet last weekend and Mulnavat won. And that's just the way life goes in this competition. I still think it's O'Loughlin Gales to lose. I think they're having strong defenders there in Nicky Butler, Hugh Lawler, and Paddy Deegan. Now they might push up Deegan and put somebody else in there, but if they had the 3 of them in defence, they're 3 inter-county players that will marshal the best of sides, and they're getting a good bit out of some of the. Owen Wall was very good again. He was involved with Waterford FC in soccer, but he's a very good forward, very easy. Now, I said the one that could go against O'Loughlin's is the softness of the field in Thomastown. That game, by the way, has been pushed back from 1:30 to 3:30 because of a bereavement down in Mulnavat. But I'd still expect O'Loughlin Gales to win that one. But the conditions, I think, might level it up a bit. Mulnavat are physically a big, strong team. And, Mick Malone is still very good. He's the Kilkenny football captain. And a number of colleagues there, Liam Fennelly, son of Liam Fennelly, Willie Dwyer still playing very well, and John Walsh, who actually missed their area match because he was actually playing in that final in San Francisco. He's been playing very well for them lately and is a solid player. So, look, O'Loughlin's won't take them for granted at all, and there's no reason they should. History will show that Ballyhale have always performed well against the O'Loughlin Gales. But I do think Brian Hogan has them in good shape here, and I think they'll make the last 4.
Based on, like, I watched Bennett's Bridge playing last weekend, and, you know, I was very impressed with how they dug that out in those conditions. David Blanchfield, I thought he was very good against Tullaroan. Like, he got on an awful lot of ball. A couple of the key Tullaroan men, I felt, just didn't get into the game quite enough. But Liam Blanchfield then, whether you call it 3 goals or 4, it's hard to know who it came off when it deflected into the net. I mean, he's going to have serious confidence going into this game against Glenmore.
Liam Blanchfield scored, he scored 4 goals and 2 points last weekend. He's a guy that has just arrived back from Australia, by the way, and he's the other guy I was talking about. He's come back from Australia. As soon as he's involved in the with Brennan's Bridge finishes, he heads back to Australia. So another long journey. And by the way, Gairdon's owner, Castlecomer, are going to have to consider getting back Kieran Wallace from Australia also. He's gone out there as well. He's played of Aussie rules football out there at a lower level to keep himself going. So Peter Hurling, but also playing a bit of Aussie rules. So he might be back as well. But Liam Blanchfield was the longest returnee in terms of the championship. But when you score 4-2, there's a reason why you're brought back. Yeah, Bennettsbridge against Glenmore. Now, Glenmore would have beaten Bennettsbridge a couple of weeks up the league stages of it, but it will be much tighter. Bennettsbridge have Liam Blanchfield, Jason Clear back, they have Kieran Brennan back, and David Blanchfield now, fresh from his All-Star nomination, is a big man in defence now for Bennettsbridge, and will be for Kilkenny going forward next year also. I could see Bennettsbridge with that, although Glenmore are actually playing very, very well, it must be said. Owen Murphy playing very well for them at centre half back, as is Alan, his brother, at centre forward, who I think you're going to see a lot more of in the Kilkenny colours next year.
Actually, do you know a question that came up on Tipcast yesterday, and I'm looking at it now. Some of the teams that have gone from intermediate up to senior in Tipperary have done quite well, and I think Mike Carkey and Ross Gray off the top of my head. And I'm looking here, Glenmore, they came up from intermediate a couple of years ago. So did Tullaroan, who were obviously knocked out last week. Does that kind of speak to the, you know, how well that they've kind of stratified the Kilkenny Championship, or just that there's not that much of a difference between intermediate and maybe the bottom half of senior in the likes of these counties?
That was the case. It's not the case anymore. Now, Thomastown will be favourites to win the intermediate, but then they were favourites for the last 2 and maybe 3 years. I think they might be get up this year, but there's a huge nervousness in Thomastown about it because they're almost afraid to talk about it. And maybe it's one of the difficulties they have. Now, they play Donegal in the semi-final intermediate next week. Right now, I think they're the only team in intermediate who probably could make some go of playing senior level. I don't think any of the other intermediate teams. It's just the way it is at the moment, Shane. But you're right, Glenmore and Tullaroan were strong teams, but Tullaroan have been fading badly in the last couple of matches, and I think it wasn't a huge shock that they got beaten by Bennettsbridge last weekend. It just, they seem to have just gone a bit flat in recent games, and that was the way it was last weekend too.
Nickey, who wins the Kilkenny Senior Hurling Championship?
And you're asking me, and it's only at the quarterfinal stages. Very, very deep, very deep. If you may ask me next, but if you just put the gun to my head, who can win the Kilkenny Championship? I'm just going to take a punt and just purely out of the dark, and I'm just going to say Bennettsbridge.
Bennettsbridge? That was probably one of the last teams I expected you to say.
All right. Gosh, I've been known to be stupidly wrong before, but I haven't thought about it in that context. We just work from week to week here because we don't know what way the wind and rain and the sun might shine, but I think Bennettsbridge could take a bit of beating. I think they have big, strong players, and they have in their backroom team one Dan Shanahan as well, bear in mind, who gives he's able to get the best out of the guys as well, along with his other mentors and that.
Shano, I'm going to call O'Loughlin Gales. Who are you calling?
I'm going to go with Dixborough.
So the 3 lads here, and not one of us has gone for the reigning, defending, undefeated All-Ireland champions.
And you know what, Michael? I know that, but look, in many respects, nothing surprised me about the Shamrocks. I mean, they could easily win this Kilkenny Championship. Of course they could. But I suppose we're at the stage where we feel that, look, maybe we're taking a punt on somebody else for a change. We think maybe the gap is closing a bit, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit if they're still to win the Kilkenny Senior Hurling Championship. They're just a great club, great set of players. They have great plans for further development down there. Everything about the Shamrocks is just incredible. But I just feel there's an opportunity here now for some of the rest. And I'm simply going, my wild card is Bennisbridge.